So all of you, ladies and gentlemen, our principals in the room, you're welcome. This is the launch of the third Regional Industrialization Conference 2026. This is our third series, and we welcome all of you. Now, regional because we are part of East Africa, and industry drives the economy, and industry is responsible for putting together the dots. Now, PSFU is the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. We are a convener. We bring together all the players in the context of ensuring that we grow the economy. And so this third series has been really growth from the time we started. Now, East Africa, as you all know, is about 400 million people, and we have access to another 1.4 of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. As part of our engagement, agriculture drives the primary production, and so therefore all of our output is largely raw, and we want to really add value. Every time you add value to a product, it grows exponentially in terms of value, but it also generates jobs, and there are a lot of economics around it. So we miss a lot of opportunity because a lot of our raw products go out. Unfortunately, we consume them even though they're ours. A case in point is our coffee. We grow coffee. We are now the biggest exporter, both Robusta and Arabica. Our coffee goes to other markets. It is processed, packed, and then we consume it. I'm not scared to say that there's so many offices and homes where you go and you find Nescafe. And some of it is primarily grown by the same people consuming it. So that is a misnomer in our view, and we want to use this opportunity to see how do we value add, process, agro-process all of these products. Now, we want to move away from rhetoric. We want to move away from a lot of talking to actually execution. And that's why these principles here are very important, and you'll hear them. Now, in 2024, when we started this Regional Industrialization Conference, we set the agenda. And this time, we've done the foundation. Now we are building on what we have already established. So, RIC 2026, the message is that it's about execution. And execution in what format? We are looking at investment, we are looking at value chains, but also importantly, from the strategic policy areas, we are going to look at measurable outcomes. So we have a lot of documents out there. We now have the ATMs. We are looking at the growth factors. We have all these development programs. Now, what makes 2026 RIC different? One, we are going to have a ministerial roundtable so that then the ministers who are in charge of oversight deliver binding communiques. So binding communique is a commitment. It's like a marriage vow or a contract that we are going to do. Number two, we are going to offer opportunities for all the players to make deals. And number three, those who have run the course in industry will be given an opportunity, a platform to exhibit. Now it's 2 days. We have policymakers in the room. We have the players, small and big, so from MSMEs to the giants. We have the investors. But there are some missing parts in every investment. You need financials. That's why we have banks in the room. We need the development partners. You need private sector leaders looking for networks. And the focus is largely to do with the impact value chains. For example, again, Uganda, East Africa is largely primary producers of agricultural products. So we are looking at agro-processing, the A in the ATMs. We're going to look at adding value even to things like our traditional botany, things like pharmaceuticals. How do you transform raw materials into something that's going to add value? Textiles, garments, leather. Again, East Africa, you know, is a primary producer. We have hit lots of steel, iron ore products. We're looking at how do we then turn that to steel and then into construction. We're looking at energy. Now there's, of course, the facilitator, logistics and transport. As we speak right now, there is a big discussion on how to expand the ports, Port Bell, Katosi, Jinja, Bukakata, so that we grow that space that can actually facilitate the movement. And so this is not just random, it is creating a framework, a bulwark for industrial transformation. We're looking at policy, which again will be discussed. We're looking at action metrics. How do we measure, plot, direct these things? We're looking at, we're going to have scorecards and say how have we performed from 2024. Then we are also going to create an accountability framework. Again, I'm lucky and happy to have Simon here. At EABC, we put governments to task. At the East African Business Council, we now have a meeting before the summit and take the presidents to account for some of these things. So in this process, of course, we shall measure, we shall track, and we look at the deliverables. Now, from a private sector perspective, our work is to mobilize the private sector and then translate policy into investment. And again, at the ministerial level, I know that they've set up a PSD, the private sector department. We are going to look at how do we create that synergy, that discussion between private sector and government. We're looking at investment opportunities. We're looking at, now on this one, the media is a critical player and facilitator in the discussion. We're going to be giving you an opportunity to interrogate, to engage the private sector, governments, to see how do we create that discussion. Move away from the politics. Let's go and talk economics. Let's talk jobs. Let's talk investment. So that we then create a new debate. There's been so many politics. In the last 3 years, the whole of East Africa has been in elections. So can we create something new? Discuss how do we strategically place East Africa outside Iran and Hormuz and all of these things. So the media will have a time, and it will be an opportunity for the media to engage businesses for advertising, for business. So this is an opportunity also for the media. And then, of course, the people who will be in the room are big, and they'll form good stories, good angles for you to. As I close, 2 things. One, from the private sector side, we want to work with you as government. We want to really, really move this animal called ATMs. And so we need your endorsement, we need your participation, we also need your commitment. To the private sector, we want you to take advantage. In business, we have a saying that when opportunity meets preparedness, there is money. So we are asking the private sector to take advantage of the people in the room, both government, the regional players, the international players, to invest, to partner, to scale, to share experiences, technology transfer, joint partnerships, business development, etc., etc. And then finally, to the development partners and the investors, we are saying East Africa is ready. 400 million, we have over, interestingly, we have over 500 universities. So the output, we have very educated young people. We have new technologies. Our kids are smart. They are brilliant. They are up there. They are really ready to engage. So we want to expose them, but also to expose you to them so that we create attraction. And then, of course, we are telling the world that East Africa is the place to put your money. And Uganda is ready for this investment. Now, the question is, how fast, how inclusive, how decisive, how effective are we? What commitments do we have? What investments are ready? And then all of us have a piece of action. We are not here to compete. We are here to cooperate and make our region the place to invest. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the opening remarks of this Rick, just to give you perspective and context of who we are and what we intend to do, and to say that there is money to be made. And therefore, this is a good opportunity. So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask the head of AGRA, Mr. David Wazemba, to come and give us a quick snapshot of how AGRA, which is one of our biggest players in this context, is coming in to support this conference. And then as he finishes, I'll ask the EABC chairman, Mr. Simon Kahero, to be ready to speak about the opportunities in manufacturing, and then trademark, and then Ministry of Trade, and then we'll close with our Minister of Finance. And I hope this time the budget is going to be friendly to private sector, so that then we close quickly and then we can go into question and answer. Thank you very much. Mr. Wazemba.
Protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Wazemba, and I head the country office. I'm the country director for AGRA. This is our third annual regional industrialization conference, and AGRA is proud to have been participating. Just not participating, but being part of the whole thinking behind the regional industrialization. I'm glad this year's theme looks and is strategically important for all of us in this room, because I can rephrase: unlocking industrial competitiveness through innovation and regional value chain integration. Why this theme, and how important is it to all of us, and specifically to AGRA as an institution? This resonates well with what AGRA stands for. And for those that want to know what AGRA stands for, I want to again highlight this. For those that possibly want to know what the acronym means, it's fair to just take it as AGRA, because we've shortened it and it has moved out of the Alliance for Green Revolution to the short name of AGRA. So AGRA is an African institution transforming smallholder agriculture from a solitary struggle to survival into a farming as a business that thrives. Remember, agriculture doesn't sit somewhere outside the ecosystem. You must anchor it somewhere. And the anchoring is around the farming system. Who is that unique identifier? And we can define it from a perspective of agriculture. So we want to see that unique identifier, who is the farmer. And you can segment the farmer across. You must ensure that they move from struggle to a thriving business. We acknowledge the role of agriculture and agro-industrialization, because those two complement each other. And recognize that in Uganda and East Africa, these economies agro-industrialization cannot be overstated. It serves as a foundation of economic activity and a source of livelihood for the majority of the population. Despite the decline in contribution to GDP, you recognize that over the couple of years, since 1995 to possibly now, the GDP contribution has gone down. But that's not a problem. The contribution of agriculture to GDP has gone down. But that's not a problem. It's just how you make that add value to that agriculture. So it's the reverse. It's a good phenomenon, but we must take it in the way that its contribution in terms of actual sector growth is significant. So, but it remains crucial in employing the biggest chunk of the population across East Africa. And we're not talking about Uganda alone. We're talking about the region per se. So AGRA, being a critical actor, an African institution working across 15 countries in Africa, we're privileged to be partnering with other partners, both private sector, governments, and other government partners, to ensure that we add value to this discussion. You recall that agro-processing accounts for a significant proportion of the country's manufacturing output, with food processing alone contributing 40%, driven by key sectors like coffee, tea, cotton and others across the region, sugar, cane, and others. These are critical sectors that need to be harnessed over time because there is rapid growth in food demand propelled by the population growth. I think this is underestimated as the role of agriculture, because agriculture can destabilize institutions, it can destabilize governments. The moment we have food insecurity, it's the beginning of all the problems. So we must recognize the importance of the growing demand for food, but also this is propelled by the changing dietary preferences that we recognize. So agro-industrialization doesn't sit somewhere without recognizing that there are growing needs, and these needs are defined by the growing population, the dietary needs of the urban population, the income growth, the emphasis on the vital role of meeting these domestic needs and export demands across board. So there is a whole transition from food to industrial implication. The food transition is becoming critical in the whole journey. And these food consumption patterns in East Africa reflects not only the demographic shifts, but also evolving economic dynamics with profound industrial implications. So what we're saying here is that the value that you're adding in the commodities that are coming from the farming systems recognize those changing consumption patterns and preferences. In order to position yourself as an industrialist, you must understand these changing needs and be able to define those products to meet those needs. If you are static, then possibly the chances are that you not resonate with the growing needs of the population across the region. So this conference must bring to book some of those trends, because these trends inform the investment potential. If we don't define trends from a food perspective, why are those patterns changing? And how do we respond to those changing patterns? And therefore fulfill those gaps. So agro-industrialization comes into play that role by providing a basket of commodities and services that fulfill those needs. We recognize that 70% of our agricultural exports leave the region and continent in a raw form or minimal processed form, limiting GDP contribution and employment creation. So effective management of agricultural commodities could become a reliable driver of economic growth and development. So developing robust agro-processing industries would encourage investments in logistics, storage, and service provision. Again, this is a whole ecosystem. You're not looking at industrialization from a linear point. It's a whole ecosystem, and you need to harness the potential of each of the nodes within the ecosystem. We recognize that we're trading within the neighbors, and this is a potential opportunity that we need to harness. Uganda trades with Kenya, and I'm looking at from a value chain perspective. There are other commodities we can talk of. Over the last 5 years, Uganda's primary imports from Kenya have included palm oil, margarine, potatoes, fruits, and other edible plant parts, barley, spices, peas. So the annually, Uganda imports about 26 million worth of palm oil, 18 million in margarine, around 6.5 in potatoes from Kenya. I'm just only giving you one example of Uganda and importing from Kenya. In contrast, Uganda's main exports to Kenya consist of tea, maize, including seeds, wheat, cereals, beans, oil cake, additional some tea. On average, Uganda exports $72 million in black tea, $47 million in maize, and the rest of the others. So again, there is a potential in terms of business across both, the two sister countries. When do we recognize this potential? Then we have to also ask, what value are we adding to each of these in order to increase the value? We can look at the numbers now, but also what is it going to be 2 years down the road if we have this baseline? Where is this coming from in terms of actual value? So Uganda and Tanzania. Uganda exports a relatively limited range of agricultural products to Tanzania, predominantly maize, beans, soybean, and vanilla. Over the past 5 years, the average annual exports from Uganda to Tanzania were worth $4.1 million in maize, 3 point in beans, 1 point in soybeans, and 1.1 in vanilla. Imports from Tanzania into Uganda are mainly rice, groundnuts, as well as beans and maize. On average, Uganda imports $156 million in rice. So recognize that figure, significantly high in terms of imports. And $14.7 million in groundnuts, $15.5 million beans from Tanzania alone annually. So again, these numbers, we recognize that trading is going on across the regions, both as raw materials for the production, but also as final products, either coming or also going into those other countries. Uganda and South Sudan. Uganda imports goods from South Sudan, but exports a variety of substantial agricultural and processed products to the country. Key exports to South Sudan include maize, palm oil, wheat flour, beans, and tea. On average, Uganda exports $35 million in maize, $26 million in palm oil and others, wheat flour, 8.8 in beans and into South Sudan. Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo. So Uganda's principal export to DRC are palm oil, around $34 million annually, wheat flour, around 10 million, tomatoes around $5 million, maize and beans around $3.3 million. So Uganda imports from DR are very limited, with mainly, being cocoa beans, oil cakes, and others that are imported into Uganda. On average, we are importing around $1.2 million, 700 of cocoa and blah. So the relative imports from DR Congo are not significantly in value, but maybe it's defined by the cross-border relations that we have in terms of the informal and the formal trade relations. So I want to point you to one area of critical importance that we shouldn't just brush off: the structural nature of global shocks and their impact in East African region. Because we're sitting here and looking at regional agro-industrialization, but we're not in isolation. We're looking at the impact from other, global shocks. Global shocks are increasing the structure rather than merely cyclonic. So disruptions like this in the Strait of Hormuz, which handles about 20% of global and significant fertilizers, have widespread impact beyond their immediate region, impacting on logistics from West Africa to East Africa. These shocks raise transport and fertilizer costs due to elevated oil and gas prices, increasing shipments and insurance premiums. For Uganda, a landlocked country, these challenges are intensified, leading to higher transport, food, and production costs. So these are starting to be manifest. And as we discussed this year, the whole issue around domestication, regional preferences becomes critical, because then you recognize that a shock like the one in the Strait of Hormuz is already affecting us. But what are we doing as a country to make sure that that we prevent these shocks? We have to be resilient as a country, and we recognize that these shocks will continue to happen. We had the Ukraine one; it did go, it passed. We having the one of oil is affecting the farmers already. We don't know what will happen next year. So as a region, we must start to prepare ourselves and understand that these global shocks shouldn't take us for as a surprise. We should also be prepared to participate in this. And therefore, to address these issues, several reforms are needed in this African financial architecture for food systems. Recognize that we're talking about agro-industrialization and agro-processing. We need to mobilize domestic capital for food and energy resilience. We need to de-risk private investment for smallholder farmers and SMEs. We need to enhance regional cooperation. We need to strengthen governance to maximize outcomes. All these 4 points anchor around the role of regional prioritization. How do we as a region try to cooperate but also become competitive? There are two levels of engagements. You cooperate, but also you have to be competitive. You don't cooperate for the sake of cooperating. You have to raise the bar such that you are able to be relevant in the ecosystem. So in summary, as AGRA, we recognize the role of joining hands in the African agro-industrialization agenda, of which AGRA feels that some of the trends that we're defining within the agro-industrialization point of view should be able to shape the investment of the different actors, be it the government, which shapes the national agriculture investment plans, be it the private sector with the need to invest strategically where there is need for creating an enabling environment for actors to perform better, and us from the development partners in trying to de-risk where possible, providing that opportunity for catalytic funding. And doing so, we possibly provide a cushion for proper landing of these investments. But largely important for us is how do we create employment opportunities for the mass of the youth that we know is the next agenda on this platform for all of us to raise the bar from an agro-industrialization perspective. How do we create these jobs that are relevant for those youth and from an agricultural perspective? So as AGRA, we start ready to provide support and expertise, but successful ultimate hinges on collective action and commitment at all levels. Let's assist this moment to build a more prosperous and resilient future for East Africa, where every citizen can thrive, contribute to regional industrialization. For God and my country, we all look forward to this support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for that fantastic foundation, so to speak. AGRA has been very, very pivotal in ensuring that we have a strong and robust agricultural framework. The A is an alliance for green revolution. So we want to create a revolution and move away from the statistics that you did mention. I don't want to go into the debate. This is a press conference that we need to really, change those figures in that context. The next speaker is Mr. Simon Kaheru. I'm going to add another portfolio because we one and the same. It's cross-cutting. He's representing the East African Business Council, but he's there on behalf of manufacturers. So he's going to combine both our Uganda manufacturers portfolio and in a bigger context, East Africa. I've already given the statistics. So your work is basically to give us some reflections on the realities, the manufacturers, what do you want to see in this policy framework, but also from a regional perspective. How do we create that interplay of the discussion? How can you mobilize people? And thank you. So let's clap for Simon.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everybody. No, louder. I know breakfast hasn't been served, but... So let me start off by thanking the conveners of the press conference, but also the conference itself, because this is almost the perfect combination of organizations or portfolios. You've got trade and industry there, trade facilitation, the money people, the ones who take it and spend it. And when I say spend it, you know what I mean. I'm coming for you a bit more. Agra, very, very important, because our focus here, and I must thank you, David, for laying it out strongly with all those numbers, is value addition where we are competitive as East Africa. And then, of course, our private sector and the other side of financing, which is private. And I'm in the middle because of manufacturing. And manufacturing being very important because it's the vehicle that we use to get value addition underway. Now, this morning, my thoughts and focus are around how blessed Africa is. Africa is blessed, especially East Africa. But this blessing is nothing if we do not turn it into actual outcomes, the outcomes that this conference is supposed to achieve. And through you, the media, what we'd like to do today is mobilize everybody in East Africa, not just in Uganda, especially the private sector, to come and get involved in this conference, not for talk's sake, but to create action. David has been very clear about the shocks, you call them shocks, that we faced. But I want us to reposition and focus as the private sector does. The private sector operates where there is conflict, shortage, to turn opportunity into the outcomes that for us we call profit. These geopolitical shocks, for instance, we've seen them for very many years. COVID-19 came, and what did we learn to do? We learned how to make face masks. We learned how to make sanitizer. That seemed to be a very big problem. The world closed Africa out, and Africa came into its own. Manufacturing picked up. In fact, I remember very distinctly that in that year, the current chair of the East African Community, our president here, Yoweri Museveni, published a paper about hard industry versus soft industry. I'm sure you all remember that. That was a key lesson that we as manufacturers took on, and we invested more in hard industry. And it is that hard industry that we refer to when we talk about unlocking industrial competitiveness. Manufacturing where it matters, where jobs are created, and where there's a value chain that is more sustainable down the line. After that, we saw the Russia-Ukraine war breaking out. And David has mentioned fertilizers, for instance, being a problem for us now because of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. But when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, do you all remember the first thing that people said? Africans are going to starve. Why? Because Ukraine, which produces the world's bulk of wheat, is not going to send us wheat. What did Ethiopia do, for instance? And I raise Ethiopia here as an example because that is the next partner state joining the East African community. Please don't say you heard that here first. Ethiopia, within the last 5 years, has become wheat sufficient. Please clap for that country. This is a very important lesson for the rest of us across Africa, but also East Africa, because we can do what we decide to do. We do not have to rely on the so-called traditional geopolitical situation that we have been locked into. And if we take these lessons to heart, even here in East Africa, we are going to grow bigger in each individual partner state, but as a region, simply by focusing on where we can grow our regional value chain and integrate it. Today, Ethiopia is supplying their own wheat and consuming it. Tomorrow, we should be taking wheat from Ethiopia instead of the Ukraine. The so-called geopolitical shocks that exist out there provide an opportunity for the private sector to grow, thrive, and innovate. Now, what are we talking about? Which war is causing us headaches right now with the Strait of Hormuz? US, Israel, Iran. How many of you have run out of fuel in the last 1 week driving around Kampala? By show of hands. No one. You don't even think about fuel anymore. And yet at the start, everybody was worried, we are not going to have fuel. No, we are resilient. We know that we can do what we need to do. And just last week, we had a Nigerian oil tycoon talking about coming to invest in East Africa in refinery. This shows you that on this continent, we can do what we need to do. We have what it takes. What we need to focus on is think regionally, integrate more. So tomorrow when Aliko Dangote comes here and some of you start calling him your uncle, you are justified to do so because he's your fellow African. You're not going to be thinking about getting fuel from Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, these opportunities are going to continue being with us. Whether it's the US raising tariffs and closing off, opportunities will open up elsewhere. And that's why after the US introduced their new tariff structure for the rest of the world, China opened up for how many African countries? You all remember, Dr. Biaruhanga there will give you the number. 53 African countries, tariff-free exports into China if you want. We have all the opportunity as the private sector. What we need to do is turn that opportunity, turn that potential into actual outcomes that are valued in profits, in numbers of jobs created, in more industries set up across this region of East Africa, but also the rest of Africa. Now, the Regional Industrialization Conference that we're going to be attending in August is going to give us a better opportunity to talk amongst ourselves as the private sector first, to form the right joint ventures. And I'm happy Stephen mentioned that we'll be having opportunities to... Are we going to have opportunities to create more businesses? Yes. Please clap for that. However, we are going to hold even the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda to account, because whereas we go for governments, and Richard, I'm coming for you, we are going to have the PSFU team give us a report after the conference of what new business opportunities have arisen during that conference, not just within Uganda as a country, but across the region. What joint ventures did we manage to come up with? And this is not going to be their problem, it's going to be a problem of all you Ugandans and East Africans out there if you do not take advantage of the opportunity that this conference is putting in front of us. This region, as Stephen stated, has 400 million people out of the 1.4 billion Africans out there. In the next couple of years, we are getting another 100 plus million coming from Ethiopia. All these people we know are mostly young people. In fact, I want David at one point to tell us, when we were growing up, we used to say that agriculture employs 70 to 80%. I don't think that number is correct anymore. Why? Because more than 75% of these Africans are young people, Gen Z, millennial type people, who hold smartphones instead of hoes. They don't know how to drive tractors. They can't even drive cars because they use Uber. Now, where are we going to put them? What work are they going to do? It is out of industrialization that we are going to actually employ these young people. Because industrialization creates the opportunities that they can actually harness, creates the jobs that they will go into, the ones that they'll be, tweeting and Instagramming about in order to make their digital money, but that provides the right amount of revenue for us to reinvest into these economies and to modernize agriculture, because agriculture in East Africa can no longer be about hoes and sickles. No, we need more investment there, which speaks again to the theme that we have up front and which EADB will be financing, because one of the challenges that we're going to be throwing to our private financiers is invest more in commercialization of agriculture. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to stress that this is going to be even more important in the years to come because of the speed with which we are urbanizing. And David mentioned urbanization. I'm sure you've all seen the statistics. In the next 15 years or so, more than 50% of these Africans are going to be living in cities. So where will agriculture be 20 years from now? What type of agriculture will we be doing? Will we have more space occupied by factories or by farms? What type of farms will we have? It is those questions that we are going to be discussing during that conference and that we need to invest in now so that we are successful in the near future. And with that, I want to stress again that the blessing that we talk about when we say Africa is blessed is a blessing that we need to convert into actual money, profits, and money that we can therefore pay to finance government operations, but which during that conference we are going to want our policy people in the rooms for every single venture so that we discuss how policy can enable the business and trade and manufacturing that we want to do. Because if we do not have the policy people giving us the right policies, we are not going to have the infrastructure we need to move these products across this continent so that we take advantage of the continental free trade area. We won't even have the policies that we need in order for financing to come into the country or to be the region rather, or to be mobilized amongst ourselves. Because in reality, on this continent, we still talk about investors coming from abroad, yet we know we have some of that money here. Can we please refocus ourselves so that we create wealth within our region, within this continent, to continue growing that wealth for all Africans going forward? So I look forward to this conference, answering these questions and turning that into reality for the good of this entire continent. Ladies and gentlemen, asante sana.
Thank you very much, Simon. That was a fantastic. I hope we have recorded the real points there. Simon mentioned the bulk of our youth no longer carry hose. They are with smartphones, and they don't drive tractors, but I opined that they drive PlayStation. But having said that, we were privileged recently to travel to the Netherlands, and we found that a lot of the Dutch agricultural sector is heavily mechanized. And so innovation has really moved agriculture now. The use of smart technology to improve on productivity. So this is also another opportunity to really use the universities, the academia, to work with industry, with government, to see how do we automate, how do we unlock. So that even when a kid is in the field doing his cassava, he's actually doing PlayStation in a cassava garden. That's innovation, and it makes it a bit exciting, So quickly, thank you, Simon, for those two contexts of EABC and the manufacturers. I'm going to invite Francis, who heads the East African Development Bank, to come and talk to a critical factor over and above what has been said and laid. How do we create a sustainable financing mechanism for this nascent but really productive sector? The one brick that is seriously missing is access to finance, cost of finance to move this animal with the opportunities that have already been established here. And I know that you speak very well, you have a good background, you understand the region very well, and we're excited about the new country coming, which will make East African community 1/3 of the population of Africa. That's a huge market. Actually, I think statistics put Ethiopia at about 130 now, which essentially means they've overtaken Egypt to become the second largest population. We already have DRC, which is number 3. So East Africa is at a good place as a consumer. But how do we finance that discussion? So Francis, the floor is yours to just highlight those opportunities that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this press conference this morning. As Stephen has already said, my name is Francis Ogwang, and I am the country manager for the East African Development Bank in Uganda. As the EADB, we're very, very happy and pleased to be associated with the 3rd Regional Industrialization Conference. I am going to talk about 4 things. One, why are we here, or why are we part of this conference? Two, I am going to talk about what can we do to unlock financing. Three, what then is the call to action for all of us who are here this morning and those who are going to be attending this conference? And four, how do we really move industrialization to the next level? Now, just to step back a bit, of course, industrialization and manufacturing is at the core of what we do as the East African Development Bank. Suffice it to say that for every region, for every country to be able to develop, it must be anchored on manufacturing and industry. I shared a statistic earlier this morning saying that for every one job that is created in manufacturing or in industrialization, 7 other jobs are created in the value chain. And colleagues and friends, there is no better way to address the issue of unemployment for our youth, for our population, than through industrialization. And manufacturing and industry is therefore integral. It is at the heart of what we do as the East African Development Bank. It is not peripheral. Suffice it to say that this conference is one of those key conferences that we have in our calendar as the East African Development Bank, as a must attend, Stephen, and the PSFU team. The other, of course, is the annual Uganda Manufacturers Association meeting, and a couple of others that we must attend as the East African Development Bank. Now, what do we need to do to unlock or to crowd financing for industry? Now, development banks exist to address market asymmetries. And what does this mean? I have just highlighted a short while ago the importance of manufacturing and industry, and yet we are not able to attract sufficient capital to this sector. As the East African Development Bank, what are we doing to ensure that, we are able to fund more projects? But let me also add that we struggle with one challenge that people may find it difficult to believe: the absorption capacity. I mean, we have more funding than good projects that we can be able to find. Now, I want to say that because of this, as the East African Development Bank, we have set aside a small fund with the approval from our board of directors to support us in project preparation. Because we realized, let's clap for that. Thank you. Because we realized that there are not many investment-ready projects, okay, in this market. And therefore, we decided to step back or integrate backwards and put up a project preparation facility that we can be able to use to prepare projects so that, we're able to take these projects all the way to bankability. That is one. But also, two, I talked about information asymmetry. There could be projects out there that are looking for affordable financing, long-term financing that we are able to provide, and they may not know. And that is part of the reason that we are participating in such events and such fora, to say, guys, we're here and we're ready to do business. And Stephen and Simon talked about the issue of matchmaking, I think, during the conference in August. We are very, very keen about that. When we come to the meeting, we hope that we can be able to find people from the private sector, with good projects in agriculture, in manufacturing, in industry, in mineral beatification, in healthcare, in energy, because we also need energy to be able to power. We also need energy to be able to power industry, and affordable energy at that. So when we come to the conference in August, we'll be looking out for bankable projects, partners whom we can be able to work with. But beyond just financing industry and projects, we're also, and that is the other reason that we're here, we're also keen to be part of the policy debate. How can we be able to, as a development bank, be part of the policy advocacy, the policy discussion that is going to shape policies that support, industry. So our call to action this morning to everyone is that yes, our being here this morning is a testimony of our commitment to see that the industrialization vision and the dream that Uganda has enshrined in the tenfold growth strategy and the various pronouncements that have been made by our leaders at various levels really comes to fruition and comes to bear. So Stephen and the PSFU team and all partners who are here this morning, as EADB, we are in it for the long haul and we want to see that this dream comes to reality. I thank you. Thank you.
Francis, thank you very much for that, especially the statement that you have money to help people shape a very good construct to access these resources. And I think all of us will have booths and places of call where people can actually go and ask and present their proposals. But we'll try and hype as many people because that's a missing link. So thank you very much, Francis, for that very good opener. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our media friends, we are now moving close to the end. We are now going to look at the one institution that has been very much pivotal in helping trade facilitation. So many of you know, I don't know whether you know this, some of you were probably not yet born, that to cross the border, you had to be at the border post by 6 p.m. and you couldn't cross before 6 a.m. So borders were like lights out in secondary school. Enter Trademark East Africa then. They helped establish and facilitate the one-stop border post. And then also through private sector push and pull, we then asked governments to ease access to movement. So East Africa now is the one place where you can travel 24/7. But more importantly, we used to cross 2 borders. You had to clear with one border and then clear with another one. Now we have one border post. So you cross once through a country and then you cross once on entry. And that is thanks to Trademark East Africa then, now it's Trademark Africa. They then helped with the digital customs systems, so now it is much faster. We had to use a lot of paperwork. Now it is just digital. And then they helped to establish trade corridors, markets, value chains, etc., etc. In the conference, we are talking about unlocking industrial competitiveness through innovation and regional value chain integration. Trademark has been at that discussion point. And so we want to hear from Anne, who's the country regional director. She handles both Uganda and South Sudan, just to give us a preview of how this conference is critical for your work and what you are going to help tell the world about why East Africa is the place to invest, why they should come and put their money here, what have you done to ease this movement, and then, of course, give us maybe some breaking news, if there are anything new, whether you have airports at the, just give us some highlights on that. So let's clap for Anne as she comes. Anne Namboze, please. I'm the only lady.
Good morning, distinguished members of the press. Thank you, Stephen, Private Sector Foundation, for inviting us here today. And thank you to all the previous speakers, because you have really set the context of why we're here and why the Regional Industrialization Conference is very key for us. I know we're talking about the East African community and how it's important for us to be able to work and trade as a region. But I just want to highlight that the East African community is a building block, just like ECOWAS and SADC. These are all regional economic communities that are building blocks to the bigger African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Area is for the whole of Africa. It's really why Trademark East Africa also rebranded Trademark Africa, because now we are in 22 countries and growing. So it is to ensure that all of Africa is speaking as one. Now this presents us a market of 1.4 billion people and a GDP, which is again cash to spend of about 3.4 trillion United States dollars. It's an opportunity we should not miss as Africans. So with this African Continental Free Trade Area, what is really key for industrialization, for manufacturing, is it's going to make the African products more competitive. It is more competitive because it has set that rules of origin that have to show if your product is fully, truly Ugandan. It has regulations to prove what is. You may have some inputs from elsewhere, but it has certain benchmarks and thresholds. If you show your product is truly African, then within the Continental Free Trade Area, it is going to be at a less cost, which makes it more competitive against goods from elsewhere. I'll give a small example. Let's look at tea. Uganda has been trading tea since time immemorial and consistently doing so. I know we have coffee, which is bigger, but in the region, tea is one of them. If we look at the, and there's an e-tariff book which is available online, anybody can be able to access it at the African Continental Free Trade Area site. As of 2022, the tariff for tea coming from elsewhere, Uganda or from India, was 400 cents per kilo. So this has gone, for the African countries, it's been reducing to 260, 200, as of 2026, it's at 160 cents per kilo. And then as of 2029, it will be at 40 cents per kilo, because 2030 is when we are saying it will be at zero tariff, okay? Which means if you're exporting tea to any other African country, it is going to be cheaper for you to export it as opposed to tea from India, which is still static at 400 cents per kilo. Okay, so it's really to encourage us to trade more, to trade beyond the 15% that we've been trading the last 3 decades. We should be able to improve on that. So the government of Uganda, this is again an improvement from the last regional industrialization conference, has been able to now have published the rules of origin for Uganda. We have been working with the Ministry of Trade over the last year to ensure that more of the manufacturers, and as well, to ensure that the manufacturers, the producers are all aware about the African Continental Free Trade Area, so that they can start using these rules of origin to be able to trade. Yes, they're already trading within Africa, but they're not using the preferential rates. So using these preferential rates means your goods are going to be cheaper or low cost, not cheaper in production, but lower cost. So that means you'll be able to trade faster. In addition to this, as Stephen has already mentioned, to be able to trade among each other, Uganda is very land-linked. We have 5 neighboring countries. The border posts and their efficiency is very key to us as Trademark Africa. So we have had the one-stop borders be a concept that has been already rolled out, and we have seen the fruits from it, the faster clearance times. Right now, what we are already piloting, on the Kenyan side you can see, is the smart gates. We are trying to have now smart corridors, because we're going from one-stop border to no-stop border. The smart gates will enable, especially the traders, the manufacturers who have already been compliant and a part of the authorized economic operator system, where they have with the revenue authorities in Uganda and throughout East Africa, they'll be able to just cross the border without stopping. This helps again with the efficiency. Also, the prioritized goods, those that have a lower shelf life, they'll be able to cross the borders faster. So again, we are working with the Uganda Revenue Authority to ensure that we can have smart gates to start with at the borders of Busia and Malaba to be able to see that through. Now, part of manufacturing, and one of the challenges we've had, is we don't want the goods to be rejected because they are substandard or they're infested by aflatoxin. So as Trademark Africa, we have been working diligently with the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, 1, to roll out to 3 regions, Mbale, Mbarara, and Gulu, with regional laboratories. As of this year, we have also completed their accreditation, because we can now, thank you very much, we can now export beyond Africa. If you're in Gulu, you don't have to bring your oil seed to Kampala to get the certificate. You can do it in Gulu and export from there to DRC or to South Sudan, which is very important. We have also established a border laboratory at Busia to be able to help again those quick tests that need to be done instead of going all the way to the nearest the nearest regional laboratory. You can do it right at the border. On the borders of Uganda and DRC being another really big market for Uganda, we are establishing a mobile facility to do this testing. It will be traversing the West Nile region, again, to ensure that our goods are not illicit, to ensure they are not substandard, but they are of standard and quality. If we have Ugandan goods, our shea butter, our honey, our seed oils, our cement, which is going, it's the biggest export we have to some of our partners like South Sudan, cement and steel, because they are countries that are rebuilding. And this is for many of us in Africa. So it's very important for the manufacturers to ensure we have good quality so that we are not compromising on that, so that our goods are fast, but also to ensure that our products are at a good cost. And as I conclude, I also just want to mention the importance of value chain work to ensure that from the input stage to the time that we are done, we have the standards all across the value chains. We know our exports for horticultural products have really suffered because, again, we don't have a lot of cold chain storage facilities or the chain itself, so that from the time of harvest to the time you're transporting it to Kampala, it can be able to survive the shelf life. So we are, again, working with different partners. We are working with HortiFresh and some other partners yet to be concluded, again, to be able to have at least some satellite cold facilities to be able to, again, boost Uganda's exports in fresh fruit and vegetables. So this conference is very, very important for us. It's going to be able to, for manufacturers to identify which nodes are there that need to be tied, which partners exist that need to be contacted for them to be able to go further. You know, they say if you want to walk fast, walk alone, but if you want to go far, work together. And that is what is needed for this conference, to be able to interconnect the different players, to be able to see the different opportunities, but also to be able to tap into the knowledge that we've had. There's financing, everybody's crying about capital, but so that we can be able to, again, go from exporting only raw products as a country, but to benefit from adding the value and also getting more for our produce. In the end, everybody will benefit, we'll have more employment, we'll have more money for our produce. Thank you very much.
The only lady on the panel could not have done any much better than she did. Thank you very much for that fantastic presentation, especially in trade facilitation. I was looking at statistics, Simon. When Ethiopia joins us, we are going to be the third largest country in the world. After India, China, it will be East Africa. How much better to have this conference with good access to borders, and how much better is it to be land-linked? We used to be called landlocked, but landlinkedness is actually an opportunity. So come for the conference, open borders, smart gates, money, good products, fantastic foundation, and now a very important person in the room, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Very, very important ministry. I'll ask Dennis to come and speak into Uganda's policy commitment, Uganda's readiness to receive. You have established industrial parks, free zones. You have an export promotion board. You have an industrialization policy. We have cold chains now at the airport, 24/7. So what is it that you're announcing to us about our readiness to receive all these people, to facilitate them, to engage them, and obviously to ensure that we grow? This is about an opportunity. Simon and David, Francis mentioned these things. What is it that is there? And then, of course, you are going to set the stage for Bwana Kubwa, who's coming to speak about the overarching policy position and the resources. So, Dennis, come and talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning once again. My name is Dennis Ainebiona. I am the Commissioner for Industry and Technology, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Private Sector Foundation and AGRA for coming up with this important platform. But before I go into the details of the statement I'm supposed to make, allow me again to extend greetings and appreciation from the Ministry's political and technical leadership. Madame Lynette, my PS, was supposed to be here, but because of some other engagements, she was not able to be here. But I still thank PSFU for the good mobilization you've made. CEO, I want to confirm that we had a meaningful discussion at the ministry where all stakeholders, most especially the different departments, were taken through the strategic importance of this forum. And again, you recall that last year in November, we worked with you to host the first ever Africa Industrialization Week, where we had over 45 countries in Uganda, and we also again discussing on how can we fast track industrialization in the whole of Africa. And so we are looking forward to continue working with you. Now appreciating this conference that is happening annually, I'm seeing an opportunity to rally the whole big country you're talking about now as East Africa, and how do we connect with the rest of Africa. And so we will be able to support it from the political and the technical leadership. When we look at the theme, unlocking industrial competitiveness through innovation and regional value chain integration. Ladies and gentlemen, this theme speaks directly to the urgent need for our region to transition from fragmented production systems to a more integrated, resilient, and innovative industrial ecosystems. Where we are now, we are no longer talking whether we should industrialize. The debate now is how do we do it faster? How do we scale up? And the approach of government, and most especially the mandate we have as Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, is to continuously review and assess the number of policy frameworks to ensure that we make our business easier for people to do. And we fast track investments that support trade and industry to thrive, and again strengthen. We are at the forefront to push for at least at the ministerial level, to push for regional trade and industrial cooperation. You also allow me to just give a snapshot about where our industry is. Since we got this new leadership, I call it new leadership for those who don't know where we came from. By 1986, this country was only having 81 industries, and which were also performing underutilizing the capacity. But today we are speaking of an industry sector that has over 7,000 medium and large industries on our business register. We are talking of an industry sector that is able to consume 70% of the total electricity generated. We are talking of an industry that is providing decent jobs close to 1.8 million. We are talking of an industry that is now contributing a GDP of about 27.2, and 16.5 of this is coming from the manufacturing industries. The person who is in front of you is a testimony. I've never worked anywhere. Since I left the university, I have been in industry. And I can tell you it's where the best opportunities are, and therefore all the efforts should be able to support that. So what are the policy commitments we have as a government and as a ministry? Our industrial policy is focused on promoting value addition and import substitution. And in this, we take advantage of where we have a comparative advantage. And in this case, we are looking at the agro-industrialization, the mineral beneficiation, and also the knowledge-intensive industries. All this has been mapped out to ensure that we address the concerns of employment, we address the import displacement, but also we take advantage over the trade agreements and the opportunities that are within the region for us to be able to export. I will speak where we as a country, we have built sufficient capacity to produce certain products which initially we are not able to produce. Today, I can comfortably say that we are sufficient in producing cement. We are making progress in making steel. We can make our ceramics, most especially tiles. We are doing electricity meters and also making industrial refined sugar and some textiles. What is our other strategy is to ensure that the private sector is at the forefront. And again, that's why I'm saying that we are happy to see that this platform that provides industrial cooperation is being spearheaded by none other than private sector foundation. Our work as government is to continuously review our tax policies and investment incentives and ensure that the private sector leads the whole process. We are also committed to ensure that the industrialization we are taking is sustainable. That is how we are able to utilize the resources. That's how we are able to ensure that the environment is not affected, but also the people who are working in these industries should not be turned into inputs. So we look at protecting even of the workers within our factories. We are also very much aware that you can't fast track the industrialization without ensuring that you have the required skills, required the technology, and therefore we strengthen, we push to have, ensure that there is strong linkages between the industry, the academia, and the research institutions, basically to ensure that we foster the innovations. How do we want to ensure that we have organized industrial development? The decision that was taken at a higher level and for us to implement is that we have to have these industries in industrial parks, in special economic zones like free zones and others. And so, government committed to put in place 27 industrial parks across the country, and progress has been made to the extent that now we have 10 that are operational. And these, when I talk of operational, these are the parks that have appropriate infrastructure in terms of roads, electricity, water, and ICT systems. But we would want to ensure that they are fully serviced, but because we can't wait anymore, we need to have the investors come and set up and create the job opportunities. Once we have the minimum infrastructure in place, Uganda Investment Authority takes up the responsibility to continue and attracting investors into this. I will speak to some of the parks, and most especially I will refer to the park in Mbale, which is under the cooperation between the government of Uganda and China. Today we are having employment. We've created jobs close to 15,000. if you go in there, they have been able to produce most of the products I've talked about. And in the morning, you see a swarm of youth entering into that park and going for jobs. And we are also seeing these industrial parks creating us for an opportunity to shift technologies from other countries. The Chinese are now shifting. Once you have these parks, they just shift factories and bring them here, to the extent that they fast track the manufacturing of the products. And so I'm looking in this conference to again provide an opportunity for some of our industrialists who are producing some of the very, very, very competitive products to come and be able to showcase them. Our Namave is also progressing to an extent that we're almost 65% to have everything put in place. Kapeka is moving on. MMP Park in Buikwe. Chair of PSF, I want to confirm that Ministry of Finance and Uganda Investment Authority, under the manufacturing program, fast-tracking the completion of the industrial parks is key on the agenda. As a government, we are also continuing to implementing the power tariff at 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and this work with Ministry of Education. To be able to export and produce competitive products, again, you cannot run away from strengthening some of your critical institutions like Uganda National Bureau of Standards, Uganda Industrial Research Institute, and this as a ministry, we've continued to provide the required financing to ensure that they have able to improve in terms of delivering their services. I also want to thank Trademark East Africa, the work you are providing to the Bureau of Standards in terms of developing the standards and simplifying them to the extent that even some laboratories are getting accredited. Accreditation, we've been getting it, we've been outsourcing it, but as a government, come the next financial year, starting 1st July, we are going to operationalize our Uganda National Accreditation Service. Ministry of Finance has provided a budget of 3 billion to kickstart the accreditation body. And what this one means, we are going to be saving close to 6 billion, which we've been spending on getting these services from foreign accreditation bodies, and who at times we also find that we compete with in the export markets, and this is going to be handled by our country. In terms of alignment with the conference, again as a ministry, we arrived to a point that we implement the East Africa Community Industrialization Policy, where we as a country, we look at the regional value chains, and particularly we are looking at agro-processing, textiles, pharmaceuticals, and leather. Maybe before I talk about this, there is no country that has industrialized without having a steel factory. And Uganda, you are very much aware that we have got one of the best type of iron ore in the world, in Muko Chigezi, and the government, again working under the arrangement of the East Africa, Uganda is going to have a 1 million tons steel factory that will be able to produce steel using iron ore from Uganda, be able to take advantage of the logistical infrastructure from Kenya to bring in coal and other industrial inputs, but be able to supply and replace the steel the whole of East Africa has been importing. And what does this one mean? That the benefits or the opportunities of working together as a region are beginning to come to fruition. Because if we remain as individuals, we remain weak and we will not be able to be there. So I was excited to hear that East Africa as a country, we are going to be the third largest in the whole world, and in our times. So we really thank God for that. Regional industrialization must be pursued collectively, and so all the partner states will be looking at leveraging on the comparative advantage and ensure that there is shared prosperity. I want to again confirm that as a ministry, this one we are taking it seriously. We have a number of agencies, some of them I've talked about. The commitment we have, and of course working with the Ministry of Finance, is strengthening the Uganda Development Corporation. I will ensure that they are part of this going forward. I'm also going to ensure that Uganda Free Zones and Export Promotion Authority to be part of this. Uganda National Bureau of Standards will be here. The Uganda Cooperative Alliance will also be part of this. And the bigger industries, all the industries, of course, working with Uganda Manufacturers Association, we are going to rally them and they become part of this platform and ensure that we tease out any issues that could be affecting our progress. So without saying a lot, that's what I can share for now. But thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Another hand clap for Dennis. Very good news. This is more than just a press conference. It is turning out to be a casque of the conference, actually. And just listening to the freshness of the opportunities is giving me a lot of hope. Our president constantly talks about consumption. But that consumption is still very raw. I am still not happy with the fact that we are importing tons in the thousands of processed coffee from other countries that is coming from here. We are selling jobs, we are selling opportunities, the financiers are supporting others. What Mr. Ozemba gave us as primary going out of the country, $70 million, 40. But then we are importing 10 times more of the same products. We have power, we have steel, we have water, we have transport, we have good borders, smart borders, and yet we are still sending out raw products. But I'm glad that the policy framework is shifting. From 70 to 7,000 industry is remarkable. That's a world record. And so, again, it talks in the spirit of creating an enabling environment to facilitate trade, investment, business, etc. We have saved the best for last, and that is our Ministry of Finance. You all know the adage that, gentlemen, money is coming. So the money is here. We're going to listen to our brother who's representing the PSST. Richard is going to speak as the closer of this big event. And in his, we anticipate, as I preempt, that Bwana Kubwa, you're going to talk about what is that enabling environment for investors to come to Uganda and here, what are the policy frameworks that are going to enable this discussion? Because you have a target of a tenfold growth of agro-industrialization, of ICT, mineral beneficiation services, and your target is 500. But we are in this thing together. If you handle us well, we shall deliver 20 times, 20-fold, 100. You have seen from 70 to 7,000. Government has very few industries, if at all. Those 7,000 are actually private sector. These people you see here. So we want to work with you. We are happy that you have come, and we want to engage all these strategic energies that are in the room to ensure that that happens. So put your hands together for Richard, who is representing Ministry of Finance, as he delivers the last of the presentation, and then we go to Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. All protocol observed. First, let me commend the fellow panelists. They've made this very easy by laying the foundation and also delving into some intricate details of what this conference should yield. Thank you very much. Mine is a delegated role. This morning, I received a call from above that you need to run to Serena and speak on behalf of the ministry. And in that regard, as you know, government policy, there are areas where I'll be constrained. I have to stick to the script, but I'll also offer some personal reflections. So I have a statement that was prepared for the PSST. Allow me to get snippets of it and share with you. First and foremost, over the years, we've had a lot of dialogue that has been progressing between the public sector and the private sector. So at this juncture, really, I want to commend PSFU that you're taking this a notch higher. You're hearing what government is talking about, the agenda that we have for structure transformation, and you're committing yourselves to be a strong participant in this endeavor. So thank you very much, PSFU. I note that this regional conference, industrialization conference, has over time evolved from just a dialogue forum into a credible platform for advancing structured, actionable engagements on the industrial transformation agenda. And this being the third conference, I think it's going to be bigger and better than the first two. So as a ministry, by our presence here today, it's a signal also that we are committed to participating in a big way. So send us the notification in advance, and we'll be very supportive in terms of participation. But also the ministry holds, as you know, in August, we have an economic growth forum every August, end of August. And that forum feeds into the discussions and interventions for the budget, the proposals that come out of it. So I like the suggestion that we need to document what comes out of this particular forum in August, and it should also speak into the proposals for the budget for financial year 2027-2028. And that is a critical entry point, because now all the interests and of the private sector, we can use that channel as an avenue to enter into the budget for the other financial year. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this also ties in with the National Competitiveness Forum. And as I said earlier on, I like the fact that we are strengthening public sector, private sector dialogue. Through these different engagements, we're able to ensure that a lot of things don't just remain at the level of just talking. We need to have actionable interventions going forward in a stronger way to generate the kind of growth and the trajectory that we want to go up to 2040. We will need to do things in an unusual way. So the time of doing things the way we've been doing them, it has to change. And that's why I'm saying that I'm giving a snapshot of all these avenues that we can take these proposals going forward, because you have so many proposals that are coming up. At the ministry, we also have a realization that a lot of projects, whereas they are well-intentioned, they are not executed well. And I'm very happy to note that EADB has responded by coming up with a project preparation facility, which is akin to what we have established under the National Planning Authority. So we'll welcome collaboration in that regard to see that the projects at the private sector level, which you need partnerships with government on, they are well structured, and we are able to execute them and finance them in line with our aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that the government is cognizant about, and we've had a lot of discussions here, the population is growing. The youth population, in fact, is growing much faster. In fact, we have over 70% of Ugandans being under the age of 30. So there is a youth bulge there, but it also presents an opportunity. And so in that regard, you begin to see that whereas in the past agriculture used to employ over 60-70% of the populace, now industry, services. Most youth, over 50% of them are employed in services. And so that means that we need to have interventions that speak or respond faster, because the trajectory is even going very fast. So our efforts in developing services, service industry, ICTs needs to be strengthened. And for that reason, I look forward to seeing the discussions in how ICT can support, science and technology can support the industrialization drive. I know Commissioner here talked about, he gave an example of Mbale, where you see a lot of youth flooding into an industrial park. But now we are in an age where there is AI. We're talking about industry, it was 4.0, now industry 5.0. So there is a lot of transformation that we can achieve if we adopt smarter technologies in our industrialization agenda. That is one thing I wanted to stress even as we prepare for this conference going forward. The other thing I noted is that, and I think Agra mentioned this, there is an issue of food security that we need to be cognizant of. 80% of Uganda's land is arable land, but statistics show us that we've only cultivated about 35% or utilized about 35%. So there is a strong potential of Uganda not just becoming a regional food basket. I mean, we talk about Ethiopia joining the EAC, but the proportion of arable land in that country is very minimal. And it's a wonder how they've become one of the big producers of wheat on the continent. Uganda has an opportunity to be a regional food basket. We can feed up to over 200 million people. And so what I'm trying to say is the resources that we have, land as a factor of production, we need to maximize its utility. And I hope that in this conference we'll be having those kinds of discussions, because when you look at our agro-industrialization agenda, we need to more than double our exports in the shortest time possible. Exports are one of the key bedrocks of the tenfold growth strategy. And with that, it will mean that if we are able to earn more from our exports, it means we are able to have better macroeconomic management in terms of debt sustainability, in terms of our exchange rate. Our exchange rate is actually one of the most stable in the world. That has been acknowledged worldwide. But we can do much, much better in terms of our export earnings and achieving. We're doing very well in terms of macroeconomic stability. And so that's why we are more resilient to shocks. If you notice that, for instance, the countries neighboring us, if you look at the fuel prices, for instance, they've had a steep spike. But Uganda, we've managed to kind of balance and weather the storm. So that points to prudent macroeconomic management. One of the things that I need to emphasize here is that the role of the Minister of Finance is basically in creating a strong fiscal and macroeconomic environment that makes industrial investment possible and profitable. And that means our fiscal, how we spend our resources, how we mobilize our resources is very critical. You will be the judge. Please scrutinize the proposals that come. Next month we are releasing the national budget, which has been approved. But a good thing is that there's been strong participation from different stakeholders, including the private sector. We are going to spend enablers for the ATMs. If I give just some figures here, in the current financial year budget, our Human Capital Development Program, we allocated 11.4 trillion, but in the coming financial year 26-27, that is going up to 13.5 trillion. For infrastructure, integrated infrastructure services, we provided 6.9 trillion. In the coming financial year, it's going to be 10.8. In terms of governance security, we had about 10 trillion this financial year. It's going slightly up in the coming financial year. And I think the point here is we are putting resources in the enablers so that we are able to realize our aspirations on the ATMs. In terms of also financing private sector, government has provided sufficient resources. We continue to capitalize UDB. We continue to capitalize UDC to enter into investments which are non-conventional but are necessary. We're also strengthening our participation with the EADB, and that's why they are able to come up with new innovations like the ones you heard Francis speak about. There are other funds like the SCF that you've heard about and the Small Business Fund, which you know about. And all of these are basically to de-risk participation of the banks and also by providing appropriate financing instruments to the private sector and also farmers. Another thing I want to do is basically this is a call to stakeholders, to our private sector leaders. You are the doers of this story. For a long time, government has had a policy of saying that the private sector is the engine of growth and government provides an enabling environment. And we want to just load the private sector. Recently, UBOS released its statistics from the Labor Force Survey and the Human Resource Survey. Now, when you look at the Human Resource Survey, they will tell you that in the last 2 years, between 2023 and 2025, the private sector created about 620,000 jobs. Now, that was about 60% of the target that we had at the time, which was to create 1 million jobs within the 2 years, because the NDP3 target was 2.5 million jobs in the 5 years. So you see that the private sector is a strong participant. Now, the target has gone up. We want to create about 4.4 million jobs in the 5-year period of the NDP4. And that means that the pace of job creation has to far outstrip what we have seen in the past. And we know that, for instance, we have about 700,000 people entering the job market every year. And so we are looking at the private sector to really create these jobs. So this conference comes at an opportune time where we can strengthen the dialogue between public and the private sector. And it would also be interesting that we are able to tie up certain commitments. You've seen a lot of developments coming up, like in the oil and gas. There's going to be a lot of developments in the next 1, 2, 3 years, which are well documented. And that's a huge story. We're seeing recently the president launched the clinker factory in Karamoja. That has significant implications for our construction industry, for real estate, and so on and so forth. There are so many opportunities there, and there are opportunities even for our fertilizers. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we are seeing a lot of opportunities for private sector participation in projects that are transformational in nature for this country. Let me just bring this to a close. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that first, government has signaled its intent to support the private sector, to co-participate with the private sector in delivering the targets for tenfold growth. Second, government has signaled that we are ready to catalyze engagements between all the partners that you want to bring on board and yourselves by providing a conducive environment. The other thing is that we are committed to positioning this country through this conference, bring together regional and continental stakeholders. And the fact that you're able to attract the kind of people that you want to bring into the country is also a signal that we are on the right track. Finally, let me just say that we'll be interested in receiving the outcomes of this conference, and we'll be able to turn them into policy reforms, areas of policy reform, but also areas where you want to influence the budget in a transformational manner. I think this conference will provide us that platform. And in fact, one of the things which I believe the ST is waiting for is, you mentioned that you had given some proposals in the past, but we need to refresh those into concrete ideas that we can push forward. But colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming here today, for being part of this presser, and we look forward to hosting you in August of this year. And yeah, thank you very much again, PSFU and partners, for putting this together. Thank you.
I think let's applaud him, Richard, the Ministry of Finance. Richard, the statistics that you see there are those that have been measured. So there is a disconnect between formal and informal. And we have a lot of informality. So we want to, as PSFU, working with our partners, our work is to bring that informal economy to the formal. And this 5 million, we shall double it. I can tell you we shall double it when and our policy team has put together a very good strategic framework. And this is work we've been doing with you under the PSD, the private sector department, which is under your leadership. So thank you very much for that. And we bring this formal presentation to a close. We'll move to the second part, which is Q&A, some of which can even be done, you know, at a bilateral level. But I want us to applaud David, our first speaker and sponsor from Agra. Thank you very much. Simon, who put on 2 hats, 2 African hats. The man who likes to do African. Thank you very much for that, especially the pointers. Francis, who has promised us the money. Even at my level of exposure and education, I still have challenges writing a proposal. So I might be one of your first candidates. Of course, to Dennis, who gave us very good stats and opened. Anne, who is smart. Smart, get smart borders, smart everything. Thank you very much for giving us the confidence that East Africa is the best place to do business because we are smart people. We have everything in place that can support. And then, of course, Richard, who really did the TKO, the technical knockout, to the event that they are committed, they will support, they will create that enabling environment for us to thrive. Now, just for closure, this is for media purposes, that the conference is going to take place in August for 2 days, 18th and 19th. And to be exact, it will be a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So essentially, if you are traveling, you have enough time to prepare on the weekend and Monday. And then we kick off on Tuesday. And then Wednesday will be the highlights, the closure, but that is where the deal rooms will be working. So the speeches will be over. We are now into action. The displays, the exhibitions, the engagement. And then, so we'll ask people to bring in the questions, but allow me to also introduce Mr. Dennis Katunji, who is representing Media Center. Thank you, Dennis, for ensuring that our media people are here. I'm getting feedback from New York that people are watching live, from Shanghai, from wherever. So thank you, Dennis, for creating that smart press conference. Fewer journalists, but technology and people accessing information. So thank you. So any questions from the media to our distinguished panelists? Quickly, if there's something you want to ask. The 5 Ws. We've given you so much news. Me and Simon were in the media for close to 20 years. So as a journalist, I was seeing so many angles. Every person who came here was giving us a bullet story. I think this should run enough headlines until August. The Kaski presentation. So any questions, quickly? Your name, your media house, and the question you want to ask. Because we have to be in the print and radio and TV in a few minutes. Regan, is there a mic you can pass around? I think there's been sufficient information, isn't it? We have documents, we have notes, so we can send you if you need to quote accurately. Some of you might quote me and say Uganda is going to have 500 million people, which will be a misnomer. Okay, if there be none, I guess we have taken a very, very serious deep dive. And so I'll ask, I think we need to take a group photo with the panelists. These are the drivers of the industry, government and private sector. So, guys, can we take...
CEO,
yes.
Maybe just to clarify,
yes.
We had NTV, NBS, New Vision, Daily Monitor, Capital FM, KFM, and UBC TV, and Star TV today.
Oh, fantastic.
And social media, we are live, and the online blogs.
Excellent. Let's clap for our people. Now, for media, there is money to be made here. Advertising, advertorials. This is also an opportunity for you to create some business. Thank you. So I think let's do a group photo.